my biggest thing is you have to be willing to kind of put yourself in the thick of it and commit to for lack of a better term, paying your dues in order to learn what you can. Because, as with any career, you don't just come out of the gate at the top. You got to work your way there.
Hello, welcome to the Amplify Horse Racing Podcast. I'm Caitlin Christofferson with my lovely co-host, Anise Montpleasure. And we are so excited to have Ashley Adams, a professional USEA eventer, with us today. She has ridden up to the 5-star level and is ranked by the FEI. And she has a history of working with thoroughbreds, off-the-track thoroughbreds, as well as all different types of horses. And I know that she fosters a really strong community within the eventing world, and she strives to be much more than a great rider, a teacher, a student, a partner, a volunteer, a friend, a business owner, and a safety advocate. So we are really excited to have Ashley on to talk about some aspects of off-the-track thoroughbreds and what they do after racing. Welcome, Ashley.
Yeah, welcome. Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, Ashley, we always start things off with, we like to know how our guests got into the equine industry and then their transition into the thoroughbred world, or for you being thoroughbred adjacent, being really involved in aftercare and transitioning off the track thoroughbreds. So how did you get involved with horses?
Yeah, actually, when I was a kid, I had, a pony club horse, and I ended up taking a clinic with Kim Severson. At the time, she was Vinoski. And I ended up really liking it. And I think I was like 14 or 15. And I ended up going and working for her from like every summer from like 14, 15, and then a full-time gig kind of through about 2021. And actually, she was super influential in helping me find my 5-star horse, which was an off-the-track thoroughbred from Jan Binney. And he was, his name was Vaunted, and he was like 4 at the time. And he had just come out of Richard Valentine's program, which he's a very successful race trainer in Northern Virginia area. And he Vaunted he started off as a flat track horse. Then he went to steeplechase and timber. And basically, unbeknownst to me, honestly, apparently Richard reached out and was like, this horse is a flat runaway. But he actually wasn't for me. I do have a funny story about his first event, but anyway, he went on to be one of the best cross-country horses that I have ever sat on, and just so game and so fast, and took me from a 4-year-old. And I was going preliminary at the time, but he was a 4-year-old, and I brought him up from his first event all the way to Kentucky. And that basically kind of solidified my path in life. So working with thoroughbreds from the very beginning has kind of been what has taught me how to run fast and jump high, to be honest with you.
So can you talk about, for people who might not be familiar with eventing, what the kind of like the heights and the levels that you came up with that first thoroughbred through?
Yeah, totally. So basically, eventing now, they actually have a starter division, which when I was growing up with Vaunted, it would have been really handy to have that division. But now we have a starter division. So that's like you can't quote me on the exact heights, but basically, I think that's, the equivalent of like 2-3, I think. And so you have a walk, trot, dressage test, 2-3 show jumps, and then you have cross country that's mainly like introduction. It's supposed to be like a nice intro to the sport of eventing. So you have like logs and water and like maybe a little tiny ditch, like nothing that's super crazy. And then you go from starter to beginner novice, which is like the jumps I think can be 2.9. Then you go to novice and they can be 2.11. Training is 3'3", followed by prelim, which is 3'6". And then intermediate, 3'11". And then advanced, and I think that can be 4'1" or 4'2". And then once you get up into the higher levels, modified now is in there, and that's in between training and prelim. But once you get into the higher levels, there are FEI divisions, and they actually start at modified. And I believe that modified's 3.5, maybe 1.5 meters. Yeah, so it's 3 foot, roughly around there. They basically have levels to kind of suit every horse, which is delightful. And you can, the cool thing about eventing too is, and I think it's different than other sports, like usually kind of once you achieve, a level, you try and like stay at that level. But with eventing, it's very encouraged that you go up and down the levels. So whatever the horse needs and whatever the rider needs, you're allowed to kind of go up and down as far as like your confidence, where the horse is in the training, where you are in your fitness, where the horse is in the fitness. It just allows a lot of flexibility there. And then once you get to the upper levels of eventing, you do have the FEI levels, which are the international levels. And those are recognized across the world in the sport of eventing. Each country kind of has their own horse trials levels, which is what I just described. And so it took me a minute when I moved to Australia to kind of fully understand those, but in that country, but the FEI levels I got because that's the same everywhere. So, and they, you have international events that are run nationally here, but under the international rules. And then you have national events that are run under your national rules.
That's so interesting. I knew that there were different levels in eventing, but nobody has ever explained it to me like that, to understand that it's, differences in the heights. And you mentioned the ability of the horse and rider in, determining whether you go up or down, but Are there any other factors? Like, do you have to compete in an event at a certain level and then somebody determines whether you should move up or down, or who makes that decision of whether you're going to move up and continue advancing?
Yeah. So for each level, you have definitely the different heights of the jumps and the width of the jumps and the difficulty of the jumps, as far as like with the terrain and with the cross-country questions and with, the number of jumps and things like that. You also have, in eventing, it's obviously 3 phases: dressage, show jumping, and cross-country, where jokingly it's the jack of all trades, master of none. But we have to also do a dressage test, and that actually kicks off the event. It's the dressage test, and in each level, you have certain movements that you have to achieve, and that they are scored on. And there, you have a dressage judge, and you get a score for that test that you do. So you get a score 1 through 10. 1 is the worst, 10 is the best, and then you get, basically at the end of that, you get a penalty score. And so that score, you want the lowest score, kind of like golf. So you want the lowest score possible from that dressage test, and then you carry that forward into the jumping phases. And so for every pole you knock down, you get points added to your score, or every time fault you have, because the jumping phases are all timed, you get that added to your score. And then on cross country, you get faults for refusals, basically you can get faults for refusals or for time issues, or, at the upper levels, if you knock down a frangible pin. There's lots of things that have developed over the years in the sport of eventing to increase the safety and increase the focus is on safety and development of the sport through the well-being of the horse and rider. And so that being said, there's lots of safety equipment that is implemented in the cross country to promote good riding, but also safety components to help you get out of trouble if something happens. Because at the end of the day, we are all riding live animals, and they sometimes have a mind of their own. And so then all of that is tallied up at the end. So you start with your hopefully low dressage score, and then it gets kind of put into and then math starts happening. You add your penalty points as you go through your jumping phases. And then oftentimes with those scores at the end, those are tallied up. for your national horse trials. And then you have to have qualifiers to get to the next level. So you have to, at that event, the events that you do, you have to achieve a certain number, or you have to be below a certain number. So you can't have, you can't have over a 50 in the dressage. You can't have an event with, you can't have a stop at every single event and then try and move up. So those numbers mean they add up to your qualifiers, and that's kind of what determines whether you're able to move up or not under the rules. Hopefully you also have a coach and some people that are in your back pocket to help you say, oh yeah, you're ready to go, or you need to do one more event, or we need to practice a few more things before you move up. But you do have to achieve qualifications and kind of check the boxes, and hopefully check them well with some good results in order to kind of climb the levels.
Can you talk about what each aspect of eventing is meant to test in a horse, and particularly why the thoroughbred is well suited to that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah. So, for me, I have been lucky enough to ride a ton of different horses, and have several thoroughbreds in my barn currently that have been restarted. In addition to the fact that I have been pretty active as mainly to make extra money, but as a exercise rider on tracks and stuff like that. And so understanding what a thoroughbred has to offer for the sport of eventing is huge. And it also doesn't take a rocket scientist. They're fast and they're quick and they have a ton of endurance. And that's what we need. So, I think the hardest thing for a thoroughbred now in the sport is kind of the dressage, is finding a thoroughbred that has that big movement and that flash and the kind of the levelness to be successful in the dressage. And they do exist, but you do have to be, you do have to kind of navigate that part. I think that's the hardest thing for them. But the cross country and the show jumping is where they just shine. The thoroughbred is super, super quick across the country. You're not going to have you'll see show jumpers and they jump really high and really big and they spend a lot of time in the air and then they land and they take really what we say scopy steps, like really big, lofty strides as they're galloping around. Whereas a thoroughbred is super quick through the air. They're very economical when they jump. They're very tidy. They land and they get away from the jumps. So that's all really cool. And then with the show jumping, they come back on the third day and they have a ton of endurance. Like they can go forever. So you kind of never really reach the bottom of them, which is awesome. And then that test, the show jumping definitely tests their resilience, their endurance, and then also their adjustability, and their kind of respect for the aids and keeping, fresh off the aids. And so on that third, the thoroughbreds they kind of always show up because that's their mentality. They're by nature, they're usually pretty sensitive animals. And so they kind of show up to play, which is really nice. Whereas sometimes with other breeds, they might be a little bit dull, or they might not be quite as sharp, or they might not be quite as alert because their endurance is a little tested. So that's all really, you can count on a thoroughbred for that for sure. And with the sport changing so much as far as, now you have to, look at the Olympic format, like it's 2 show jump rounds. So you definitely have something that has enough gas in the tank at the end of the event to be able to kind of show up and leave all the sticks up in the cups.
So Ashley, going back to the horse that you mentioned, who is a flat horse and then got into the steeplechase and doing timber races, which for our listeners who don't know what timber racing is, it's a type of steeplechase event where you're racing over these very large, solid fences that are made of timber. And they're 4 feet, over 4 feet, sometimes very solid. But what's that transition process? So you have a horse that knows how to go fast and knows how to jump. What did that transition process look like to make that horse into an eventer?
Yeah. So for each horse, it's a little bit different, but typically, with the thoroughbreds, like and especially coming out of a racing industry, they're keyed up, and they know that like when, at any point, like their task is to go hard and go all the way. And so kind of going back to what I was saying about the dressage, like you kind of have to teach them to take a deep breath. And so a lot of times if you get something straight off the track, you definitely want to give it time to calm down, and you want to give it some downtime. Also, you have to remember, it's like with humans, like you may see, so like, if you look at like track and field, it's Olympic time right now, so I'm all about the Olympics, but, you look at the track and field athletes, and all of those athletes they're all super, super fit, and they're all ready to rock and roll for their sport. But you look at a shock putter, and then you look at like the 200-meter guy, like they look completely different, right? So that's just because of what their sport requires them to do, the muscle tone and the muscle mass and the fitness that they need for each of their individualized sports. Like that's different. So I think that what you have to remember is that with the thoroughbred, they have to definitely have, from coming from a racing industry, their muscle mass is a lot different. So you have to give them time to kind of calm down in their body to kind of go back to neutral, if you will, in order for you to then put on the muscle and the body weight and the condition that you need for your sport specifically. So when I got vaunted, he had already had a little bit of downtime and had already kind of been restarted a little bit by professional Jen Benny. And what we kind of, the rule that we live by is they get a few months, in the paddock, or they get a few months of downtime. And then you start introducing them to the new ways of going. So, the aids are definitely different. The way that they kind of handle the stress and the workload, their reactions, you have to kind of train different reactions. So, for a racehorse, like when you get on and you kick it, like it should go really fast in a straight line or wherever you want it to go. But with a show horse, it has to be a little bit different. They have to kind of learn to accept the aids and be a little bit more, everything needs to be kind of calm, and the introduction isn't, you're dealing with an animal, so it's fight or flight. And, we want there to be something in between that. So you kind of have to train that a little bit. And then you start introducing, you want to introduce their new job to them. So making them, on a simple level, much like the starter level of eventing is an introduction to the sport of eventing, you have to introduce them to all of that stuff. So whether that's going out on hacks and taking them with friends, through creeks or up and down different terrain and things like that, like teaching them kind of about all the other things, that are outside of what the only thing they knew. That's definitely important. So doing it kind of without a timeline in your head, you let the horse tell you what the timeline needs to be. And some horses take to it really fast, and some horses need a little bit of help and need a little bit of time. And that's kind of the beauty of working with an animal, because as soon as you get it, and especially a thoroughbred, as soon as they understand something, they're so smart that they just, that's it. So once you kind of give them that time to calm down, and then you kind of are able to introduce everything, then you're able to see where maybe, each horse is individual. So where one horse might be a little bit more nervous about, going through water, and the other horse, another one may be totally fine with it, but maybe nervous about, being in warm-ups, or something like that. You just kind of have to let them tell you where they need help, and then, you address that and just continue to educate and transition them into their new life.
So one of the things that we talk a lot about on this podcast is careers, because in thoroughbred industry, it's not like you can necessarily just go buy and own a racehorse as a kid. So we focus a lot on the career standpoint. And, tell us about your career as a professional eventer. Like you mentioned Pony Club, we've talked about what eventing looks like levels wise. What has your pathway and journey looked like from a kid to where you are now in progressing into your career as a professional eventer?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, there's, again, like, what's so great about the thoroughbred industry is it is really versatile, and it can take you in multiple different ways. So my pathway isn't always everyone's, but it definitely, I will say that being involved with thoroughbreds has set me up for a lot of different avenues in my life, just through my own confidence in my riding, through kind of risk assessment, and through understanding, how to handle horses, and kind of through their, through their lives, and kind of the transition that they can take throughout any sport, really. But I started in Pony Club, and that was really important for me. And I love having Pony Club. Now, to this day, I love having Pony Club kids come to the barn, just because, it's definitely, you have to understand that it's horses in general, in any career that you take within the horse industry. It is kind of like, it's a whole animal type of situation. Like, you can't ride without understanding the tack you're using. You can't understand the tack you're using without understanding, the purpose of all of it. And you can't prepare the horse for the ride without understanding kind of the parts of the horse and how it works, and what is, if they come in with a big leg, like understanding where the problem is, or what the issue is, or, if their shoes are funny, understanding who to call and how to manage that. So Pony Club definitely kind of gave me a well-rounded outlook on kind of how to understand and manage my pony, basically, and my first real horse and all that stuff. But then I did, when I started working for a professional, I definitely think that having someone that, I always say this, I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I always want to be surrounded by people that are more intelligent than me. So when growing up, either whether that was having a regular instructor, regular lessons on whatever I had to ride at the time, or going to work for someone, being a working student, taking a summer, going over spring break, doing things like that, allowed me to be able to surround myself with people that knew a lot more than me, and also had the resources to help me. So when something went wrong and I said, I need help with X, Y, and Z, they had the people that could help me solve the problem and educate me on how to, manage it or prevent it in the future. And as with horses, you can think that you have everything organized, but everything can also always go wrong. So that was really helpful. So I think that once I kind of decided that I wanted to learn more and really delve into the eventing, I did go and work for someone professionally. And I did that just as a working student. So basically I was able to work off my horse's board and my housing. And I got to kind of see how they operate and travel around. And, horses can take you all around the world. So I was able to travel overseas and groom for Kim and do all of that stuff. And it was amazing. And I attest a lot of my fundamental thing, kind of instincts and knowledge and things to her, for sure. But while I was doing that, because, working student, like you got to start somewhere. So it's basically the equivalent of an internship. You got to pay your bills. So at that point I would gallop racehorses at Montpelier in Virginia in the morning. So I would do that a couple days a week, early mornings. And drive out there. And that was at first, it was an eye-opening experience, because it's totally different than anything I had ever done. But it taught me a ton about kind of my balance, and basically how to, you can't panic when you're up there. And so learning how to handle a horse and handle speed, and you're kind of like you're riding in traffic, so you have to when you learn to drive, everyone always says it's not just you that you have to worry about, it's everybody else. And that's the same when you're on a racehorse. So I was able to do that. And then through that, I was able to start schooling steeplechase horses at my next working student job. So that was really fun. And that was learning a totally different skill set. I kind of knew about the, flat track racehorses and that speed and kind of what all of the lingo meant and things like that. But then you have to teach them jump. Learning that skill set was also super important to me and to my career, because that was also, that's basically cross-country riding at the core of it. And then we have to, now with eventing, we still have to add in basically cross-country is kind of the equivalent of doing something like that. And then also going forward to put in the dressage into it. So then kind of after being able to work for a few people professionally and learn from there, everyone kind of does things a little bit differently. So learning a bunch of different tactics and a bunch of different methods, and being able to ride a bunch of different horses as I worked for other people and kind of developed the skill set to be allowed to do that. I also did a lot of, side jobs like galloping racehorses or steeplechase horses. And then helping people that, were kind of coming up behind me in those working student positions, whether they, helping them with their young horses. And a lot of those kids did have off the track thoroughbreds. And it was really important that, that they be able to start their foundation with their horses, successfully and safely. And that was also, it's also really rewarding, just because you get to see kind of people progress with their horses, but also in a safe manner, because, I was there to help them, but then I was also working for someone. So there was, kind of a chain of command. So if I got to a point where I didn't know the answer, I could go to someone else, and then that person was able to achieve their goals. And from there, I actually ended up, producing a lot of horses up the levels and riding and competing, and just kind of growing my knowledge through working with other people, and then subsequently working for a couple that they were, their hobby was, importing horses from Europe. And so I was able to kind of restart those horses. And then I had a couple off the track thoroughbreds that I, brought along and flipped and sold along the way and things like that to make, to make a little bit extra money. And then actually I ended up moving to Australia for a couple years. I met my husband, and he is Australian. So I moved over there, and oddly enough, the story was kind of the same. I ended up meeting up with some people, riding some horses, but then needing to make more money. So I started galloping racehorses in Australia. And it's kind of, it's the same thing, just different side of the world. But that was really cool, because the racing industry in Australia is huge. It's so big. And it's so just kind of present at around every corner. And so it was, it was just everything, to where it was a way for me to make money, but it was also so present because we lived in Sydney, just around the corner from Randwick Racetrack, which is one of the largest racetracks in Sydney. So it was also a great day out, but it's really interesting too. Like they start their racehorses a little bit later, and those horses go for a little bit longer. And so, you could have they call a country track where I galloped. They had a couple horses that were like 7 and 8 and still racing and super sound and just, looked great. And I think it's just because, maybe there's similar to eventing, maybe, there are like national rules that are a little bit different, and regulations that are a little bit different than here. And then, and so it was just, it was a really cool experience to kind of learn, how they do it over there and the things that they can use and not use. So it was really interesting. And then I ended up coming back here to the States and kind of was able to start teaching some, and have, start my own barn and have I had a couple horses that I was able to purchase and bring up the levels and compete, and now have a barn full of clients and horses. And so that's, you just every day get up and it's such a gift to be able to work with horses and do what you love for a living. But at the same time, it's a lifestyle. It's not a job. So you have to really love it.
What a journey.
Yes, what a journey. Absolutely. And you mentioned, I found it really interesting that riding on track helped you with your balance. So what can you, because I feel like sometimes there's a misconception between the equestrian and the horse racing communities about riding, and equestrians might think, well, there's no collection or there's no method to the madness on the track, right? There's, you're just kind of hanging on for dear life and letting the horse run.
I mean, sometimes you are, but I'm not gonna lie. And I don't claim to be I claim to be a professional eventer, not a jockey. But I will say that as an exercise rider, it is, and even in Australia, it was actually nice in a lot of ways, because those guys, they want their horses to be a little bit more well-rounded. So even in their off season, I would do some flat work with some of them, in the arena, or we would, take them and gallop on the beach, to kind of change that. And so if you're on a track, you're kind of able to stay, in your lane. But, if I was going to take something out along the beach and have to dodge fishermen, I need to be able to steer it and ride it. So, so that was, and maybe that's just an Australian thing. I'm not really sure, because they do a lot of weird things over there. But, but yeah, so you definitely have to kind of understand, there is a point of connection with the horse that it is a little bit different than your classic, position riding in an arena and things like that. And I was definitely average at it, but I, you do learn a different core balance. So your core and your lower back, kind of how you hold your position on the horse. It kind of definitely teaches you just to stay in the middle. And that's something that in eventing, we always say, if you can, if things are going wrong and if you can stay in the middle of the horse and just kind of support them and keep your balance and kind of almost stay out of their way, then it allows them to usually, especially thoroughbreds, they're so catty and they're so well balanced and they're so quick with their feet and can kind of, what we say, pat the ground. Even if the distance is a little wrong in front of the jump, they're able to move their feet really fast and get their legs out of the way. And so oftentimes as a rider, if we can just stay in the middle and keep our balance centered, and hold our own position, then they're able to kind of help us out and move their feet. And so when galloping on the track, it definitely teaches you to be able to do that and find that center balance. And it's interesting too, because it's a little bit different for each horse. So, where you sat on one isn't maybe where you're going to sit on the other. And I do think that definitely helped me with kind of understanding how to stay with the motion and kind of stay where I need to stay without, getting off balance. So if something zigs and zags, you can kind of zig and zag with it. And that's also helps with galloping cross country. You have a lot of terrain and you have a lot of undulation, and you have to be able to recognize that and kind of feel what's happening underneath you and react to it accordingly. I will say that, obviously the different styles, with being, riding in a race position or riding in a dressage position, for example, it's totally different. So you definitely end up having to switch back and forth. And, you have to be good at that. But I think that for me, I am very grateful that I did some exercise riding, and kind of a number of with different people as well, because again, you're riding under a trainer. So there's someone that's on the rail that's watching you and watching the horse go. And they, each horse again needs a different thing in its training. You don't just put them on the track and let them run around till they stop. There's a method to the madness as far as how far they go and what they need and where they go, whether they're preparing for something or coming back from something or whatever. So again, it kind of goes back to that whole, the idea of having a career in horses. Like, you can't go into it very laser focused. It has to be thinking about the whole horse and the whole situation, because, it's not just kind of, it's not necessarily a task-oriented job. It's very much so all-encompassing of, health and wellness, and thinking about longevity and thinking about goals in the future, and kind of you're training an athlete, and you are as well. Like, you're an athlete as well, so you kind of have to work as a team to get where you want to go. And I think that was what was really interesting about kind of learning the different disciplines and kind of learning the different methods to everyone's, whether it's your style or whether it's the horse's preparation, and even nutrition. It goes all hand in hand, which is really cool.
What, Ashley, has really, what learning experience really stands out to you from looking back at your career and all these amazing experiences you've had, and people you've worked under, and horses you've ridden? Is there anything that, if you were, sharing advice with a young rider, you would say, this experience really stood out to me in helping develop me as a rider and a horsewoman moving forward?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And it's something that I harp to a lot of my students as well, and like my people. You have to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you. Like, you have to. And that means you need to be around other professionals that can help you. There are a lot of horses, and it's no different than, even kids in school. Like, you may have like the world's best, like, state champion football player, whatever. But if you don't, they maybe are really, really talented, but they need help in math or something like that. And so you have to have a tutor. You have to have someone help you. And I think that's really important. Like whether you learn from the ground up and you just go into, say you're interested in being an exercise rider or a race jockey or something, go into, find, a place to where you can go and even just be, a strapper was what they're called in Australia, but a groom for a race barn, or being a working student in an eventing barn, or working in, whether you want to be a dressage rider, a show jump rider, you can do, like, that's what's so great about horses, is that at the end of the day, having the skill set to understand how to care for them, it can take you across the levels. So, but you need to have someone that can help you do that. So I think for me, the biggest thing is all the people that I've worked for. Like, my resume speaks volumes. And also, that being said, for, people that work for me, they, in my industry anyway, they know that, like, if you say, oh, I worked for Ashley, say, okay, well, that means that she's, this person is probably going to be organized and has a lot of attention to detail. And that's something that I'm really proud of. But the only reason I have that is because of all the people I work for. So that would be my biggest thing, is you have to be willing to kind of put yourself in the thick of it and commit to for lack of a better term, paying your dues in order to learn what you can. Because, as with any career, you don't just come out of the gate at the top. You got to work your way there. So, and then now also, oftentimes you're working with a live animal. So you got to, listen to them, and you've got to be willing to kind of ebb and flow. And in order to know when to ebb and know when to flow, you got to have someone that's already ebbed and flowed. So.
What's next for you? Like, what are your goals that you're still pursuing?
Oh, gosh. It's never, like, that's the other thing about this industry, is that it never ends. Like, you never know everything. And when you think you're done learning, you probably need to stop doing this. It is like, it never ends. And I think for me, like, I'm so hungry to keep learning more. I want to learn, everything, more about nutrition, more about conditioning, more about management, more about vet care. Obviously, in addition to more about my skill set and working with people around, but, career-based, as far as like kind of competition goals, I am just coming off of a super event with my three main competition horses at Rebecca Farm. I did, Charlie was second in the 4 long there, and then, which is the advanced level. And then my next horse in line, Quicksilver, he was 7th in the 3 long there, which is the intermediate level. And then a little mare that I ride for a good friend of mine. Her name's Global Halcyon, and I ride her for Annie Goodwin. And she was 4th in the 2 long, which is the preliminary level. So they all shipped out to Montana from Virginia and completed that big event. And so that was a huge milestone for all of them, getting them kind of put up in their levels that was the hardest thing they've kind of done to date, all of them. So my goal is to tick off a few more of those big competition boxes this fall, going to the Morven Park 4 long and the Maryland 3 long. That's also the Maryland 5-star. So that's a goal. And then and then, kind of, if the universe is listening, going overseas to compete next year with, 1 or 2 horses. And, that's, again, just having more experiences and being able to present on a bigger stage, always pushing yourself with the help of your coaches and vets and farriers and friends.
That's so awesome. And the universe definitely listens to the Amplify Horse Racing Podcast. I just want to give you that cool confidence. Yeah. The universe is always listening, especially to this podcast.
That'd be great.
This is
you kind of have to do that. You kind of have to do that with horses. I said, you kind of have to do that with horses. You wake up every morning, you're like, today is a good day. And then you walk outside and like 3 of them have pulled a shoe, whatever. Typical.
Just keep saying today is a good day.
Yeah. I love your point that you touched on about like being a lifelong learner though. And always pursuing learning more and continuing education. And Caitlin, I feel like we've talked about that on other podcasts, and, you and I as like young professionals in our career, always striving to learn more, but also how it keeps you grounded on one hand, but also like always enriched and stimulated. And I feel like there's, when horse professionals or really professionals in general, when you get to this point where you feel like I've done this for a long time and I have nothing more to learn, that's probably when you start to feel stagnant. And Ashley, like you said, probably when you should find a new job. But when you are continually learning and putting yourself in challenging situations or in positions to continue to build your knowledge, like your career stays interesting. So whether you've done it for a few years or many years, like it can always stay interesting by learning something more, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about the horse industry. Like there is a place for everyone in the horse industry. Like that's what's so awesome. Like it is very like all inclusive as far as whether you don't want to ride. Like if you love horses and but you're not super competitive, you don't want to ride, that's totally fine, because I can tell you that like I need 3 of those people, you know what I mean? So it's and then if you want to, if you're someone that really loves young horses and you just want to work with young horses, that's possible as well. If there's for me, totally kind of going off of eventing, but this is something that my family has benefited from a lot. My brother was benefited a lot from using, rehab therapy through horses. And a lot of thoroughbreds, can go toward, do that as well. And there's just, there's so many avenues that you can take in this industry as a career path. And I think just kind of being willing to think outside the box, but also no day is ever the same with horses. So that is very exciting. And I think that you just have to make sure that you kind of find something that fits, and then also surround yourself with people that can help you get to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I can't let this podcast end without bringing up Snoop Dogg at the Olympics and how many people are probably now watching dressage.
How great is that?
Snoop Dogg.
That's so great. I was super bummed that luckily I was able to cheer on a lot of my friends at the Olympics for the eventing, and I was bummed that he didn't get there for that. But it is so cool. Yeah, how great is that? I don't. Again, there was another meme going around that says, "I don't know who decided that Snoop Dogg was like America's mascot. But we needed it." Like, so you know what I mean? Like, how great is that? And and even with the jumping and stuff too, he's like freaking out about that. Is very cool. They did a good job with that.
Everything, all the coverage on it. And I just said I never thought I would see Snoop Dogg in a Sam Shield.
Oh my God, and his half chaps. Did you guys see his half chaps? Oh my God, it's so funny. So funny. I loved it. I was so excited.
Yeah, if the universe is listening, if you could just get Snoop Dogg to a racetrack now, that would be great.
I know. I did go to, I went to the Preakness and this year, and there was like some of the Phillies football players were there, and watching, and like it was very cool. Like, and then some people brought their kids, and it was very cool. Like it's definitely like the Thoroughbreds they just are able to transcend so many different disciplines and so many different things. And even in upper level eventing, we always say like, for an eventing at all really, but we always ask how much blood does it have? Like that's a term that we say like, oh, what's the blood on that one? Meaning how much thoroughbred blood is in there, because we want a good percentage in it. It is a necessity for what we have, because you'll never meet something that's more loyal than a thoroughbred when you get it on your side.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so cool. Love that.
Caitlin, cool. Anything else to add?
Just going back to, I was thinking about, we actually haven't talked about my personal experience with Ashley. But just going back to the, never stop learning and never be open to learning. So Charles and I did do a clinic with Ashley in January 2023. And it was, his kind of first big thing after a few months off. And the first day he jumped me out of the tack and was kicking over all the jumps, like very exuberant. And then, the last day he decided to pull a really cool party trick with me when we were jumping in the arena. And at the end of it all, we got an amazing trot out of him, probably the best trot he'd ever given us at that point. And I thought, but I was kind of looking at the weekend as like a little bit of a disaster. And Amanda Merritt, where Charles is, out of Brenham, Texas, they were like, look how much you accomplished this weekend with him. Like, yeah, it was a bit of a struggle, but look where you got to the end point. I feel like that's having people around you like that, having that mentality, whether you're running your own business or you're a professional rider, you're trying to work your way up through like a career in the thoroughbred industry, having people around you who can point that out and have that mentality is super important.
Yeah. And that's what it is. Like, I think that even like for me, like working as a working student and as a groom and as a rider, like you have long days, like it is hard work. And like, even when I posted an ad for looking for some help at one point, I was like, long hours, hard work, and horses are needy. So like, that's what it, but at the end of the day, like you're like, holy crap, look what I just did. Like, look at what just happened, or look how much braver the horse is, or look how much more, look how positive that experience was. So it was very cool. That's awesome. Well, I hope you come back.
We will for sure.
Yeah, no, that's
Ashley,
awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. What a cool episode. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn more about eventing and better understand the eventing world. Not being very familiar with that. And I'm sure very interesting for our listeners too. It's just,
and how influential thoroughbreds are in that world as well.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
get caught in our bubble of like your discipline or your sport that you're interested in. So it's so important to keep learning, keep stretching your mind, learn about other disciplines as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. And I if anyone has any more questions, like I'm sure that you guys can link them up to me, but I encourage everyone to try a little bit of everything and just keep an open mind and enjoy the process. It's always a process and you have to enjoy the process. So to your point, Caitlin.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.